Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Marriage and Kinship. We have talked about marriage, we have talked about care, and today I want to talk about desire, or more specifically in Japanese, I want to talk about akogare, which is a desire or a longing, a pull that you might feel towards something. So, what is desire and how is it related to kinship? And how is this article related to kinship? Because I wonder if some of you might have been a little confused by it. So let me ask you a couple questions first. What is it that we actually want exactly when we want something? Do we just want that particular thing? Or do we want a whole complex of things that we imagine are intertwined with that thing? Okay, I'm sorry, that used the word thing way too much. Um, let's make it more concrete. Why are you getting a university degree? Is it a love of learning? Is it a desire for the degree? Why do you want the degree? What do you imagine is entangled with the degree? What is the thing that you really want there? Or is it maybe a whole set of things that you really want? And feel free to talk about this in the comments. I can tell you that for me, in the process of getting a PhD, nobody gets a PhD without a genuine love of learning and research. But apart from the love of learning and research, a lot of my motivation for getting that PhD was the lifestyle that I imagined would be enabled by the PhD. And so far, that's actually working out pretty well for me. So, good job, me. So, everybody watching this, I assume, is getting their university degree in English, and that might not be a language you grew up speaking. So, what do you get when you learn English and when you can demonstrate that your English is at a certain level? Are you thinking about job opportunities that might expand because you have this additional skill? Are you thinking perhaps that you might get paid more because you have this additional valuable skill? Are you thinking about travel opportunities perhaps because English is kind of the international language and a lot of the hospitality industry is organized around English speaking ability? And so if you speak English, you can go anywhere. Or maybe because you speak English and also another language, you might be really employable in the hospitality industry pretty much anywhere, which brings me to this idea that you might not just be interested in travel opportunities, but maybe also migration opportunities. Moreover, speaking English can give you connections to people who speak English and maybe who don't have another shared language with you. And so by speaking English, you can extend your personal connections to new social networks, to other people who also speak English, but who maybe don't speak Russian or Kazakh or one of your other native languages. And finally, maybe English can also bring you some new marriage opportunities as part of those extended personal connections. Last time we talked about spousal visas. So, marriage opportunities can also be tied to migration opportunities and then also employment opportunities in countries where maybe salaries are higher. So, you see, English is tied into this whole complex of things that you might want. In the Japanese case, in particular, there is a long history of writing about Japanese women and Western men, specifically white Western men. It is largely a tragic tale, and while it's been written about extensively in the Japanese context, the kinds of phenomena that we see in Japan are not exclusive to Japan. You can find similar dynamics throughout Asia, especially East and Southeast Asia, but I've also seen it in Central Asia too. So, a significant number of white men fetishize Asian women for their supposedly submissive and traditional values and personalities. Likewise, a significant number of Japanese women fetishize white men right back for their supposedly more egalitarian, chivalrous, lady first views of relationships and the Western romantic image that they represent. Alas, people are humans and not stereotypes. I have yet to meet the submissive and traditional Asian woman in all of the years that I've been living in various parts of Asia. And, the men who are coming to Asia who want women who are going to be submissive and traditional are not really the men who have the super egalitarian and romantic ideas about marriage. And a lot of intercultural relationships wind up not going very well because it turns out that when people have different culturally situated ideas about what marriage is or what romance is, and they think that love can solve all of their problems, it just doesn't go very well. Not to say that intercultural relationships are doomed, just that they require a certain amount of consciousness and work that I don't think a lot of people put into them. And some of this is just my personal opinion from, again, years living in Asia and watching the white men around me in my migrant circles become unhappy. But there are theoretical implications that these kinds of relationships have. So we can use the case of Japanese women studying English overseas in order to investigate linkages between the desire for knowledge and the desire for particular lifestyles and particular relationship styles that they see as intimately connected to that knowledge. More broadly, this research actually asks a question that I think is really similar to the questions that Bornemann is asking. Namely, how is it that people work the system? How do they manipulate structures of education and migration to get to the life that they want? How are all these desires connected? And what do you pick as your sort of entryway into this lifestyle? For a lot of Japanese women, it's studying English. That's the entry into this whole system of a desirable life. All right, so Pillar and Takahashi in this article give us 5 in-depth case studies, as well as stories from women who were in the same social circles as these 5 women who are less central participants in the study, but whose experiences do inform their conclusions. So all of these Japanese women moved to Sydney at various relatively young ages to pursue English education. Everyone was sort of in that 18 to 39 sweet spot. So why pursue English across the Pacific Ocean? Japan is not super close to any place, really, except for Korea and China. Australia's pretty far. So why? Why go so far? You can be glamorous and cosmopolitan if you pursue English. This is something that Japanese media teaches women pretty strongly. You can chase your dreams. English allows you to do that in a way that other languages don't. Those dreams, to be fair, are probably made of movies, and those movies are filled with white male romantic leads saying romantic things in English. This study was written in 2006. It involves women in the early 2000s who are, in their 20s and 30s. So they're thinking about Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt. Maybe when you think about attractive English-speaking movie stars, I don't know. Who do you think about? I was thinking maybe about all the handsome Chris's of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but maybe I'm out of touch. So English gets you a white boyfriend who is going to be that movie romance for you, and a white boyfriend gets you better English. And it's a cycle. Maybe at some point when your English gets better, you can upgrade and you can get an even better white boyfriend. And so the white boyfriend comes along with the romance because you just can't have the relationship you want in Japanese if you're an independent-minded Japanese woman. This is the conclusion that all of these women have slowly come to. Some women went for it right in their youth. The youngest woman in the study actually finished high school in Sydney and then studied university in Sydney. For others, they decided they really needed to improve their English later when age made them really disillusioned with the opportunities available for them in Japan. All right, now that we know what these women's goals are, we can ask what makes these women feel that they've achieved their goals. Is it test scores? Is it grades in a formal academic setting? Is it their acceptance into English-speaking social life? It's the last one. And this is true for a lot of reasons. One is that there's a very common belief in foreign language teaching that the absolute best way to learn, maybe even the only way to really learn, is through experiencing everyday life among the natives. And if friendships are great, then romantic relationships are even better. So the absolute best way to learn is to have a boyfriend. This is partly because you can feel comfortable and loved in a romantic relationship. And so if you're nervous maybe about your English speaking ability, you can be less afraid. And it's also partly because the way your boyfriend treats you, the way your boyfriend talks to you, is the thing that lets you know that you are transforming into that person that you want to be. When he calls you honey or darling, you know that you are the object or the heroine of that kind of romance that you've been dreaming about. It's also really important to point out here that the Japanese view of the natives is specifically white. Australia is a colonial country. There are lots of Indigenous Australians who speak English natively because they've been forced to learn it, but they are not desirable boyfriends. Non-white migrants to Australia and their descendants, there's tons of Asian Australians, also not desirable as boyfriends. And neither are Japanese-speaking white Australians. This is because all of these women are aware of the world of stereotypes in play, and as much as they might kind of be objectifying white men as language learning tools as well as romantic fantasies, they themselves don't want to be fetishized. They don't want to be with the guys who are just going to fetishize them right back and perhaps use them as Japanese practice. That would defeat the purpose. So, in the comments, I'm really curious to know, what does English mean to you, dear students at an English medium university? When do you feel like you've succeeded at English, or like you've achieved your goals, or like you've got the thing you wanted, or at least maybe you're on your way to it? And finally, what is the bundle of things that you want? what is the lifestyle or imagined future that is attached to English for you? So, thank you for sticking with me, and I'll see you virtually next time.